Welcome to the Psych Gym. I'm your trainer, Vanessa Perry, a former mental health therapist turned intuitive counselor. Much like a physical gym, in this space, we'll aim to target specific psychological muscles and train them to be stronger. I'm so glad you are joining this gym. Let's hit the weights. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Psych Gym. I thought I had one in the bank for this week, and I did not. So I'm recording this on Tuesday of the week that it was supposed to come out on Monday. I overestimated how ambitious I was a few weeks ago because I did record a bunch at one time. I definitely just thought I had it here today. But whatever, I know y'all don't care. And this is just me in action trying to fight my inner perfectionist. That's like, you said, and now you're not doing, yada, yada. See, same thing happens to me, guys. We're just going to do it. We're just going to jump in and it's going to be fine. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that affects every single one of us, whether we know it or not. It is something that I've heard talked about in many different ways, and it still feels like it's sometimes very misunderstood how it affects us, truly. And also the different ways that it doesn't apply across the board, which is the thing that confuses people the most. It's the thing that confused me the most. Even doing this work, trying to figure out my own attachment style was like, what on earth? This does not fit the tidy categories. Shocking, because tidy categories are not a thing with humans. Anyway, have you ever wondered why you might feel anxious when a friend doesn't respond to your messages? Or why some people seem to pull away when things get a little close? That is how attachment theory works, or doesn't work, depending on what's going on. It's all about how our early relationships, usually with our caregivers, yes, I know that's very Freudian. We go back there. Not to blame, but to explain. But those relationships, they shape the way that we connect with other people as adults. And why is this important, Vanessa? Because understanding your attachment style helps you be healthier in all of your relationships. And it helps you choose romantic partners that are also healthy, or really anybody in your life that's also healthy, right? Because we want most of the people in our lives to be healthy. And so we want to be able to know what kinds of attachment styles we're working with sometimes. And it's not really meant to be a judgment thing. It's really meant to be, again, like an explanation thing, because we can still choose to be around people who maybe have some of these attachment styles that are a little bit more challenging, but understanding them helps us not get sucked into a tornado when it happens, or, get layers of trauma put on us because we're not understanding what's happening on the other side. So let's start here. Y'all know I do not like being clinical, but this is a thing that I do carry in my non-traditional practice. And it's something I've had to work really hard on personally too. I mean, yeah, these bonds that we form as kids with our caregivers, it's like patterns that relate to all others later in life. If your early environment felt safe, consistent, and supportive, you probably, believe that relationships and people are reliable and you're worthy of love. You probably expect it, right? But if those bonds were unpredictable or inconsistent, that usually shows up in adult relationships as anxiety, avoidance, or a mix of both. So here's the thing that I really want, like before we jump in, I really want y'all to understand this. And I say this literally about everything because I truly mean it. This is not a life sentence. Just like nothing is a life sentence. If it is a snapshot of where your mental health is, or if it's a snapshot of where your emotional tendencies lie, that's not how it's always going to be. I don't ever want you to carry a label in what feels like a negative way, because most of these labels are temporary, right? Some of them, absolutely, they have to do with our brain structure and certain things like that. But this in particular, don't think of it as I have to own one and be in one forever. It's a lens. It's like a tool. And when we understand them, we can work with them. I also really need you to know that there's a difference between a core attachment issue and an attachment issue that forms due to trauma. The core ones are way harder to change than the ones that just kind of happen along the way from someone who broke your trust with them in particular. Like how I am totally secure with all of my friendships, but I've struggled hard in romantic relationships. That's because my friends have always been solid and my partners have not. But I remember bringing that up to my own therapist once, and she was like, "That is very interesting. You have no anxiety about your friendships?" I'm like, "Not a one." Never have. They're all solid. Even when we don't maintain them, there's just love there, and I know it. And it's a bond I can feel, right? My partners, you better tell me 53 times a day, and if the energy's off, I'm gonna freak out, right? Prior me, been working on it anyway. So I myself have worked through avoidant tendencies due to trauma and disorganized, or what looks like disorganized attachment in relationships, in romantic relationships in particular. And it's hard ass work because if you're like me, your friggin' body is the reactor and you're battling physical symptoms, not just emotional or mental gymnastics. So, yeah, that like avoidant, anxious stuff would manifest in my body, and then I would have to do something about it, right? Some people don't have that, and I'm very jealous of them, but for me, it's there. So, again, that's from trauma though. So I don't run around telling people that I am an avoidant or a disorganized attachment style person, right? I've never done that because I'm not. My core is fairly stable. I do have bonds that from childhood that were fine. And even if there's bits of trauma in there, that core attachment is there. So I don't display these behaviors when I first meet someone. It's only after something happens. So that kind of thing, like keep it in mind as you listen about this topic, that there is a difference between your core attachment wounds and your trauma attachment wounds. So let's just get into the styles now that you are hopefully prepped very well for that. We're going to talk about the 4 main attachment styles. As with everything, remember that none of this is cut and dried. There are some other, additional styles, quote unquote, that sometimes are floating around there. But I feel like if we get these down, we can understand that like there can be bits and pieces of each of them, and you can call them honestly whatever the fuck you want. Depending on the person we are engaging with, we might display some parts of an attachment style that we are not used to embodying, but it's reactionary, not fundamental within us. Again, like I'm just going to say this in like 14 different ways, probably, of being like, yeah, it's not always just cut and dried. Like when we get anxious and start obsessing about what people are doing, but we're not normally like that. And it's because that person broke our trust, right? So it means that we are exhibiting those anxious traits. But fundamentally, as a person, it could be a reaction to something being outside of our normal secure attachment feelings, right? So somebody doing something triggers my anxiety because I don't really know how to handle it. It's not comfortable for me and it's not something that I'm used to dealing with. So I'm going to start doing some anxious things, right? Does that mean I have an anxious attachment? No, that means I got some trauma in my friggin' relationship that I have to heal and some trust building activities to do. Psychology is so much, it depends. People hate it, but to me, it's great news. It means that nothing has to be anything across the board. So again, like I'm going to say it like 10 million times during this podcast. So let's start with secure attachment, like the ideal, right? Securely attached people are comfortable with both intimacy and independence. They trust, they communicate openly, they can handle conflict without losing their shit completely each time. For example, if your partner says, I need some space, you might feel okay with that because you trust the bond is strong enough to handle temporary distance. You'll likely still want to outline what those boundaries mean and set goals or expectations of what space is, but you'll be able to do so without the spiral that happens with a non-secure attachment style. And how does this form? So, secure attachment develops when caregivers are consistently responsive and emotionally available. So, as a child or an infant, a lot of times this is infancy, when you cried or needed comfort, someone reliably soothed you. You learned my needs will be met and I'm safe in relationships. Sounds great, right? Mm, 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 mm. And again, a lot of people have to work at becoming secure again because you go out there and you get hurt, right? And so you have some trauma getting in the way of your secure attachment, but you understand secure attachment. And that's what I'm saying is that people who have this as a core attachment style, when they meet a healthy partner, they're able to just engage in healthy behaviors because that's like their baseline. This is normal for me, is safety. So let's get into anxious attachment because it is not that. Anxious people crave closeness, but consistently worry about being abandoned or unloved. They often overthink texts, they seek constant reassurance, or they feel panicked when they don't hear from somebody they care about. There is no trust in the bond, and therefore there's always a chance that it will drop unexpectedly. This is a perfect chance to talk about that effect that I mentioned a bit ago, where you may be secure with a partner who's reliable. You may become anxious with a partner who has broken your trust. It's a reaction, not necessarily part of your core attachment style. I know that makes it tricky because this is what I was talking about before. It's something I display only in romantic relationships once trust is broken. It's not there beforehand. I am all in. I am so good. I'm like, hey, this is fantastic. And then the second something happens, we are off the cliff, right? Um, I should be using past tense because I've really worked hard on this, but it doesn't exist in my friendships, so that's not a core part of my attachment style. It's purely trauma based. So, like the example being, you see that your partner hasn't replied to a message in a few hours, so you might trigger, there might be a trigger of worry. And then lots of trauma stories like to come in at that time of what's really happening and what you should look out for. And your trauma will come in to go, hey, so and so did this, and they're probably doing the same thing. And yeah, it sucks, like the anxious attachment. But that is, again, like if it's a reactionary thing, then trust building activities are kind of easier to do. If it is a core thing where you just walk around believing every person that you meet is eventually going to leave you, then that is a very different situation, right? Because there is a very core belief that you are not a person that people are going to choose consistently because nobody ever has. And then we go off into relationships displaying this behavior and people aren't going to stay, right? So then it perpetrates the cycle of trauma and it becomes quote unquote true. But is it, right? Or is it just me playing out and self-fulfilling prophecy because I don't understand that I have an anxious attachment style? So how does this form? A true core anxious attachment often develops when caregivers are inconsistent. So they're sometimes responsive and then sometimes unavailable or unpredictable. So as a child, you don't ever really know if your needs are going to be met. So you're just like really hyper alert to signs of rejection. Like you know that you have to be the person who's on alert. And that is anxiety, right? Like hypervigilance. Next, we're going to go with avoidant attachment. Avoidant individuals value independence big time, and they often struggle with intimacy, not just physical intimacy, emotional intimacy. They may pull away when someone gets too close or shut down in any kind of conflict or confrontation. I would say that I probably in my late 20s and early 30s, this was a little bit where I was at with romantic relationships. I just didn't want to deal with it. I had no problem, again, still no problem attaching to friends. No big deal. But avoidant when it came to romantic relationships. So trauma along the way, creates some of these traits. So we don't have to go thinking our whole attachment style is fucked though. Like, I'm not an avoidant right? Just because I had those tendencies back then. And so thankfully nobody said, you're an avoidant. And I didn't hold on to it and be like, oh my God, I'm so unfixable, because it wasn't true. So an example of this would be feeling super overwhelmed if your partner wants to have a deep conversation about your feelings, and you may respond by retreating, right? Emotionally, you're just kind of like, oh my gosh. Or sometimes avoidance will start fights just to try to get away from the situation. Either way, it's about not diving deep. It's about not being too close. It's about not letting there be vulnerability, because vulnerability means that that inconsistency has a chance to control you. Either I'm going to get what I need, but I probably won't get it forever, and so I'm just going to kind of like avoid that by controlling it myself, by not needing it, not wanting it, making sure I reject it before it rejects me. Avoidant attachment usually happens when the caregivers are emotionally distant, dismissive, or rejecting, right? So this is a child who learns to suppress their needs and become self-reliant because they don't reliably get comfort when they reach out, right? So it absolutely just don't have needs, don't have desires. You will be rejected. You are rejected constantly. And so I will control that by being the rejector from the start. Awful, right? Like, it sounds awful, but it's a protective measure. Our brain is so amazing with how it loves to try to protect us. And then last I'm going to talk about is what, you know, people call disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment. And I think I see this one the most in people who have a lot of trauma. So it's a mix. They want closeness, but they fear it. And this is often tied to trauma or inconsistent caregiving. And it feels like a push-pull dynamic. If you've ever dealt with this, or if you dealt with me romantically between the ages of 32 and 38, it is frustrating as shit. I swear it's what creates anxious issues for me. If you're anxious, I get it. If you're avoidant, I get it. But this one, I'm just like, man, figure it out. Right? Like, do you want it or you don't? And I get it that, I understand that, right? You wanted it. There's a core desire for safety and love and comfortability and stability. But then when you get close to it, there is that fear, right? Because it hasn't ever been around for long enough for you to trust that it could stay. So you get it and then you freak out about it. And then who knows what kind of defense mechanism comes in. And that's why we call it disorganized, because it could be, just anxious and like, oh my God, I need this. And then all of a sudden it's, I need nothing and I don't need you. And ooh, yeah, it's rough. It's so rough. It's the hardest one, I think, because it's a mix of different things, which I'm going to tell you right now. So the example of this is what I just said. You reach out for a connection and then suddenly there's a withdrawal because it feels too vulnerable. It's too close. It's too much. Overwhelmed with all the feels. How does this form? History of trauma, abuse, or scary caregivers, right? The child experiences a caregiver as both comfort and fear, deep comfort and deep fear, right? So this creates confusion, and that push-pull dynamic becomes hardwired as a bond trait, right? That sometimes you'll get all the love and then sometimes you will get punishment and, you have to be afraid, right? So again, like the brain is just like, ooh, these things happen with people that love us. So we have to make sure that we are like on guard no matter what. So if we get too much love, we have to be like, whoa. And if we get not enough love, we have to be like, oh my God, right? Sucks. It sucks. I feel, oh gosh, as I outline these things, I'm just like, oh gosh, all the things that happen that make our lives hard and make our relationships hard. But if we all do this work, it does make things easier. So how does this show up in our daily life? Because, like I described before, it's not always super easy to see. And sometimes people will think that they're secure. And then you look, kind of sit in it and think about the ways that they do things. And they're like secure in some places and not secure in other places that are really important to have secure attachment. So it, shows up everywhere. It's not just our romantic relationships. In dating, it might look like chasing somebody you like or ghosting when it gets too close. In friendships, you might be the reliable one who always shows up or the one who keeps distance. And at work, sometimes, attachment affects how we take feedback, we lead teams, or deal with conflict in the workplace, right? So, we're going to go through, or I'm going to try, we're going to try to go through and in each attachment style, how this can show up so that hopefully you can maybe identify some of this in your life. So we'll start with secure again, because let's start off with oh my God, this is our goals. Hashtag goals. In relationships, this is a person who communicates their needs clearly. They listen without defensiveness, and they bounce back very quickly from anything that feels like an argument or a disagreement. In friendships, they keep very healthy boundaries, and they can be very supportive without overextending themselves. At work, they're very comfortable with feedback. They're easy collaborators. They don't panic if there's criticism or about approval. And, just kind of like an everyday example, if a friend cancels plans last minute, there's disappointment, but there's not a spiral. They can trust that the relationship is not in jeopardy just because that person canceled those plans. So, yay, secure. Let's go with some anxious. Sometimes they call it preoccupied, but anxious is, a good word for us to attach to, I feel like. Speaking of attachment. So in relationships, this can look like worrying that a partner doesn't love them enough. You're checking repeatedly your phone or needing frequent reassurance that never ends, right? Because that's the thing about it, is that it never ends. The reassurance never lands. The trust never lands. It just continues that way. In friendships, it might look like being an overgiver so that you can have friends that are close, and you feel very left out. If you're, left out of plans, you feel very hurt, and you start to wonder why and think that people don't like you, and it just kind of goes into this this spiral that has to do with your worth in these friendships. At work, an anxious person will take criticism extremely personally. They'll read tone of emails, often negatively, whether or not they are negative. And also, though, they might be people pleasers to avoid conflict. And let's see, like an everyday example, if your partner is quiet one evening, an anxious person will assume something's wrong or that they've done something to cause that person to feel that way, right? And then what do you do? What's the matter? What did I do? And if they say, I'm just quiet, no, you're not telling me the truth. What's really happening? And then they needle. And again, like it's the self-fulfilling prophecy, the saboteur comes out to go, I know what's going on and we should just make it happen right now. Bummer, man, right? Like when we realize that that's what happens, sometimes it's sad. So how about an avoidant or dismissive attachment? How does that look? Kind of in every day. In relationships, they will struggle to open up emotionally, right? There's like a wall that people don't get behind. They value independence to the point of creating distance, and they will completely shut down during conflict. Oh God, that was me. I was like the steel trap. I remember a friend once saying nobody gets in the vault, do they? And I was like, nobody gets in the vault. And now I'm like, oh God, now everybody's in the vault. It feels like I'm just like, man, here it is. In friendships, it will look like keeping people at an arm's length, avoiding depending on others in any kind of way. And they will just look self-sufficient on the outside. But a lot of times, we're wired for connection. So somebody who is avoidant will look like they're fine alone, but they'll not really feel great alone because everybody wants love. At work, an avoidant person will excel when they're by themselves, but they cannot collaborate or feel like they're being micromanaged, right? Because that's too much. It's a microscope. It's too much vulnerability, right? And we don't want any of that when we're avoidant. So an everyday example, right? We're just going to keep the everyday examples seem to be relationship related, and it's because I wrote the script. Anyway, if a partner asks, can we talk about our relationship? They'll feel cornered, overwhelmed, and just really want to try to escape the conversation. And again, sometimes that can look like shutdown. Sometimes that can look like creating an argument, which seems weird, right? Because they're trying to avoid conflict, but sometimes they'll use like a very deep conflict tactic to stop the thing from happening, right? So they might start yelling right away so that they can escape. And that's what's so tricky, right? Because it feels like, oh, shouldn't you not want conflict? But that is the way that they are keeping conflict away. And then lastly, this disorganized attachment in relationships, it's that push-pull dynamic I was talking about before, the craving the closeness and then feeling really unsafe and withdrawing. The trust issues are strong with these ones, right? Because there's, again, the trust that that goodness, that safety is going to stay is very hard to build. And you have to stay in order to build it. And when your attachment style comes in to tell you that you're unsafe, of course, until you're really working on it, you're just going to keep perpetrating the cycle of the push-pull dynamic. You're going to keep being abandoned because you're creating an abandonment environment by withdrawing yourself from relationships. It's very sad, I know, but this is what happens. In friendships, you see a disorganized person be intensely close for a while and then suddenly just disappear. At work, they have difficulty trusting authority and oftentimes will go between like really high performance and then being completely burned out and withdrawn. And then we'll go with our relationship example because that's what they all are. A disorganized person may text a partner, I miss you, and then feel too exposed and avoid replying when the partner responds back in kind. Very frustrating. Hopefully this information, I'm going to wrap it up now. Hopefully giving you this information helps you look in on your everyday life too, so that it can make more sense. Once you notice these activities within your brain and your heart and your soul and your belief system, you can start shifting them. But that detective work has to come first. All my clients know this for sure. Like I send them out on detective missions and I'm like, we're going to be super specific because we can't really get at some of this stuff if we don't really know what it is. So we're going to have to get specific. Be a detective. And it's got to be deep, right? We can't just do the pop psychology terms just because some of the behaviors fit. We have to look across the board. Again, like if I am anxious in relationships, but I'm not anxious in my friendships and I'm not anxious at work, I am not an anxious attachment person. I've got relationship trauma, right? And that means I'm going to have to handle that a little bit differently. So yeah, we have to be able to separate that attachment from trauma. And I just reminder that the attachment styles can change. It is not a life sentence. The awareness, safe relationships, and therapy, right? I'm not just saying it because I do it. It really is helpful. It can help you, what they call it, earned secure attachment, which is like, oh my God, like earned. I can't stand it. But that's really what they'll say is like, you've shifted from one into a secure attachment. So it like gives life to the fact that you're never going to completely change, but what you're going to do is just be more of that, more secure. Once trauma happens, we can never actually forget trauma, but we just are able to navigate it much better when we understand secure attachment and we've participated in secure attachment. So, like anything else, it's a small daily practice. We're self-soothing when we're anxious. We're communicating honestly instead of shutting down. And we're tolerating that discomfort when we get really close to somebody so that we can shift these patterns. We're literally rewiring our brains, y'all, right? Like neuroplasticity, we're doing it. And it is helpful, though, to have a good therapist or a counselor to help you because they can help you talk about what your discomfort is in closeness, really talk about it and provide you with validation and tools and just that comfortable space to be able to help you know how and sometimes rehearse communicating honestly, right? I practice with people all the time. What are you going to say? What are you going to say if they say this? So that the words are there when the anxiety comes in. They've got options, right? So it does help to have somebody who really understands this alongside you for the ride. So, knowing this It gives you clarity, compassion, and a way to be healthier. And I think we all are asking for that of ourselves. We do want security, and we do want to be in healthy, loving relationships. All of them are friendships. We want to be healthy at work too. Like we want to be able to feel comfortable in a lot of places. And that very often starts with us. And then we, shift environments if we need to, or shift relationships if we need to. But just think about it. Look at yourself, notice your reactions, not just your romantic relationships, but in all of your in all of your relationships. Do you pull away? Do you chase? Do you feel really secure and you don't even think about it? Just notice without judgment, right? We're not doing this to be like, oh my God, how could you do that? It's like, oh, that is what you're doing, right? That's the language. Like, oh my gosh, you are doing that. I wonder why that is. We're not using the judgment. We're just doing the detective work. So I hope that helps y'all. I know, again, like these are kind of short. They kind of give a chunk of information all at once, but hopefully it inspires you to, again, do a little bit of this work. And if you feel like you identify with some of the things that are in certain attachment styles, research it. Go in and see how you can shift those things so that you can have healthier relationships. It's totally worth it. I mean, I am very serious about that. It's totally worth it. Once you have been able to be healthy in a relationship, you're like, oh man, this is amazing. Who knew this was a thing? Right? So again, I hope that helps. And, if you feel like this could help somebody, make sure you share it. If you have any questions for me, or if you need some help with this, I'm here. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to cover, absolutely shoot me that message. But until next time, take care of yourselves. And thank you for letting me be your guide today. Love ya. Thanks for listening. To learn more about what I do and how to work with me, head to thepsychgym.com to check it out. Keep lifting, y'all. It's worth it.